The crystalline palace walls of Zephyria Prime hummed with barely contained energy as Ambassador Kelrian paced the ornate chamber, his scaled hands clasped behind his back. The Zephyrian diplomat's normally composed features showed deep concern. The sound echoing through the corridors was becoming unbearable, a constant, heart-wrenching wail that had persisted for 3 standard days. "She hasn't stopped crying since the funeral," Kelrian murmured to his aide, a younger Zephyrian whose own scales had dulled with exhaustion. "The entire diplomatic quarter can hear her grief." The source of the disturbance was Princess Azura, the last surviving member of the royal bloodline of the neighboring crystalline territories. At barely 2 cycles old, equivalent to a human child of 7, she had witnessed the destruction of her homeworld by the savage Korthak invasion. Her parents, the king and queen, had died shielding the evacuation ships with their own bodies, their sacrifice allowing thousands to escape, including their precious daughter. Now Azura sat alone in the guest quarters, her small form hunched in the corner of an enormous room designed for adult dignitaries. Her sapphire blue scales, once lustrous and proud, had turned a dull gray with grief. Tears of liquid starlight, a unique trait of her species, flowed continuously down her face, creating small pools of glowing fluid that sparkled briefly before fading. The Galactic Council had placed her under Zephyrian protection while they decided her fate. Some members argued she should be hidden away on a remote world for her safety. Others suggested she be raised by the Zephyrians as one of their own, despite the significant biological and cultural differences. A few even whispered that perhaps it would be kinder to let her join her parents in whatever afterlife her people believed in. But no one seemed to know how to comfort a grieving alien child whose people expressed emotion in ways that most species found deeply unsettling. Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Diplomatic Corps arrived at Zephyria Prime aboard the transport vessel Times Harmony Times, just as the situation reached its breaking point. The 34-year-old xenoculturalist had spent most of her career studying alien societies, but she had never encountered anything quite like this. "The entire diplomatic staff is at their wits' end," Kelrian explained as he led Sarah through the palace corridors. "Our species doesn't cry as hers does. When Zephyrians grieve, we enter a meditative silence that can last for weeks. We have no experience with this." The wailing grew louder as they approached the guest quarters. Sarah could hear the raw pain in the sound, not just sadness, but the kind of deep, existential loneliness that came from being the last of something precious. "Has anyone tried to comfort her directly?" Sarah asked. Kelrian's scales shifted to an embarrassed purple. "We've attempted traditional Zephyrian grief counseling, offered meditation crystals, even brought in a choir to sing the ancient songs of peace. Nothing works. If anything, our efforts seem to distress her more." They stopped outside ornately carved doors that thrummed with sonic dampeners, though they barely muffled the heartbreaking sounds within. Sarah placed her hand on the cool metal, feeling the vibrations of the child's grief. "May I try?" she asked. Kelrian's eye stalks drooped with defeat. "At this point, human, I would welcome intervention from the void itself. The other ambassadors are threatening to relocate their delegations if the noise continues." Sarah entered the chamber alone, moving slowly and keeping her hands visible, a universal sign of peaceful intent that most sapient species recognized. The room was vast and cold, designed for creatures much larger than either her or the small figure huddled in the corner. Princess Azura looked up as Sarah approached. The alien child's face was startlingly humanoid despite the scales and the large, multifaceted eyes that gleamed like cut gems. Those eyes held intelligence far beyond her apparent age, but also a pain so deep it made Sarah's chest tighten. "Hello," Sarah said softly, settling cross-legged on the floor several feet away. "My name is Sarah. I'm from a planet called Earth." Azura's crying didn't stop, but her eyes fixed on Sarah with curiosity. She had probably never seen a human before. Earth was relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved interstellar travel only 50 years ago. "I heard about what happened to your family," Sarah continued, her voice gentle. "I'm very sorry. Losing people you love is the hardest thing in the universe." The child's wailing shifted, becoming more of a whispered keen. "Progress," Sarah thought. "I lost my parents too," Sarah said, the words coming easier than she expected. "Not in a war like yours, but in an accident when I was about your age. I remember feeling like I was the only person left in the whole universe. Azura's crying quieted to soft sniffles. She tilted her head, studying Sarah with those remarkable eyes. "Would you like to know what helped me when I was sad like you?" Sarah asked. The alien child nodded, just barely. Sarah reached into her diplomatic pouch and pulled out a small wrapped package. "This is from my world. We call it chocolate." She unwrapped a piece of milk chocolate, the sweet scent filling the air. When humans are sad, sometimes eating something sweet helps us feel a little better. Azura's nostrils, barely visible slits above her mouth, flared as she caught the unfamiliar smell. Her crying stopped entirely as curiosity overcame grief, if only for a moment. "It won't take away the sadness," Sarah explained, breaking off a small piece. "Nothing can do that. But sometimes a little sweetness helps us remember that good things still exist in the universe." She placed the chocolate on the floor between them and slowly pushed it toward Azura. The child looked at it with suspicion, then back at Sarah. "It's safe," Sarah assured her. "My people have been eating it for thousands of years. It comes from a plant on my world called the cacao tree." Azura reached out with one small, scaled hand and touched the chocolate. It began to melt slightly from the warmth of her fingers, and she jerked back in surprise. "It's supposed to do that," Sarah laughed gently. "The heat makes it soft so it's easier to eat." Tentatively, Azura picked up the piece and examined it closely. Her tongue longer and more pointed than a human's flicked out to taste it. Her eyes widened in amazement, and for the first time since Sarah had entered the room, the child made a sound that wasn't crying. It was barely audible, more of a surprised chirp than anything else, but it was enough to make Sarah's heart soar. "Good?" Sarah asked. Azura nodded eagerly and popped the entire piece into her mouth. Her scales began to shift color, cycling from gray to a warm amber as the chocolate dissolved. She looked at Sarah, with something approaching hope. "There's more where that came from," Sarah said, pulling out another piece. "But first, would you like to tell me your name? I know you're a princess, but I'd like to know what I should call you." "Azura," the child whispered, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Princess Azura, of the crystalline territories." Her voice faltered on the last part, the reality of her loss hitting her again. "That's a beautiful name," Sarah said warmly. "On my world, Azura would mean blue, like the sky. Is that what it means in your language too?" "Blue like the deep ocean," Azura replied, accepting another piece of chocolate. "My mother chose it because I hatched during the season of deep waters, when the 3 moons align and make the seas glow." Sarah smiled. Already the child was talking about her past without dissolving into tears. "That sounds magical. I'd love to hear more about the season of deep waters. But first, are you still hungry? I have other things from Earth that might interest you." For the first time in days, Princess Azura smiled, an expression that involved a delicate flaring of her gill slits and a brightening of her scales. "What other treats do humans have?" And, as Sarah began unpacking more items from her diplomatic supplies, she could hear the blessed silence settling over the palace corridors for the first time in 3 days. It was a small victory, but sometimes the smallest victories were the most important ones of all. Word of the miracle in the guest quarters spread through the palace faster than starlight. Ambassador Kelrian stood outside the doors, his scaled head pressed against the dampening field, listening in amazement to the sound of gentle conversation and occasional laughter, actual laughter coming from within. "Impossible," muttered Ambassador Vexthul, the Corridon representative whose people prided themselves on their logical approach to all problems. "We calculated 17 different therapeutic interventions. None achieved even marginal success." "Perhaps," Kelrian replied thoughtfully, "we were approaching the problem from the wrong angle. We tried to comfort her grief with our own cultural methods. The human simply joined her where she was." Inside the chamber, Sarah had transformed the cold diplomatic suite into something resembling a cozy space. She'd moved the furniture to create a small circle on the floor, using decorative cushions and her own travel blanket to make a nest-like area. Azura sat cross-legged in the center, her scales now a warm gold color as she sampled various earth treats. "This one tastes like sunshine," Azura declared, holding up a piece of honey candy. Her command of galactic standard was impressive for someone so young, though she occasionally lapsed into melodic trills that Sarah was beginning to recognize as expressions of pleasure or excitement. "That's honey," Sarah explained, unwrapping a piece of dried mango. "Insects on our world make it from flower nectar. We've been eating it for thousands of years." "Insects?" Azura's eyes widened. "Your world has tiny creatures that make food for bigger ones?" "Oh yes," Sarah laughed. "Bees are some of the most important creatures on Earth. Without them, many of our plants wouldn't exist. Everything is connected." This concept seemed to fascinate Azura, who began asking rapid questions about Earth's ecosystem. Sarah found herself describing forests and oceans, seasons and weather patterns, animals both large and small. With each description, the child's scales grew brighter, cycling through shades of blue and purple and gold. "Your world sounds like a story," Azura said wonderingly. "All those different creatures living together, helping each other survive." "My world was." Her voice trailed off. And for a moment Sarah worried the grief would return full force. But instead, Azura straightened her small shoulders with visible determination. "My world was beautiful too. We had crystal gardens that sang in the wind, and deep pools where the water glowed with living light. The people could grow things with their minds, making art from pure thought." "That sounds incredible," Sarah said softly. "Would you like to tell me more about it?" For the next hour, Azura spoke about her lost homeworld. She described floating cities made of living crystal, creatures that were part plant and part mineral, festivals where entire populations would join their voices in songs that could be heard from orbit. Her descriptions were vivid and joyful, a celebration of what had been rather than a mourning of what was lost. "The Korthax destroyed it all," Azura said finally, though her voice was steady. "They don't understand beauty. They only know how to consume and destroy. But they couldn't destroy my memories. Those are still mine." Sarah felt a surge of admiration for this small, brave being. "You're very wise for someone so young. And very strong." "I don't feel strong," Azura admitted. "I feel scared and alone. Even with the kind Zephyrians taking care of me, I feel like I'm floating in empty space with no direction." Sarah considered this carefully. "You know, on Earth we have a saying, 'It takes a village to raise a child.' It means that children need more than just parents. They need a whole community of people who care about them." "But my village is gone," Azura whispered. "No," Sarah said firmly. "Your old village is gone. And that's a terrible loss that will always hurt. But you can build a new village. The Zephyrians care about you. I can see it in how worried Ambassador Kelrian is, and now you have me too. I'd be honored to be part of your new village." Azura looked at her with those remarkable eyes, processing this idea. Would you teach me more about Earth? About your villages, and your treats, and your singing insects?" "I'd love to," Sarah replied. "And maybe you could teach me about your people's culture too. From what you've told me, they were incredible artists and builders. That knowledge shouldn't be lost." A soft chime sounded through the chamber, the palace's way of announcing mealtimes. Azura's stomach made a small rumbling sound, which caused her scales to flush pink with embarrassment. "I haven't eaten real food in days," she admitted. "I was too sad." Sarah stood and extended her hand. "Well, we should fix that. Would you like to go to the dining hall with me? I bet the Zephyrians have prepared something wonderful." Azura hesitated, looking toward the door. "What if the other ambassadors stare at me? What if they think I'm just a burden? Then they'll have to deal with me," Sarah said with mock sternness. "I'm quite fierce when it comes to protecting my friends." This made Azura giggle, a sound like silver bells that made Sarah's heart light up. The child took her offered hand, her scaled palm warm and surprisingly soft. They emerged from the guest quarters to find Ambassador Kelrian waiting anxiously in the hallway. His relief at seeing Azura walking and smiling was so obvious that his scales shifted through several colors in rapid succession. "Princess Azura," he said, bowing respectfully. "It is wonderful to see you well. We have prepared a feast in the small dining chamber, with food suitable for your physiology. Thank you, Ambassador Kelrian, Azura replied, her voice still quiet but steady. This is my friend Sarah. She shared Earth treats with me, and now I would like to share Zephyrian food with her. Kelrian's eye stalks swiveled to look at Sarah with something approaching awe. Captain Chen, the entire diplomatic corps owes you a debt of gratitude. How did you accomplish what our finest grief counselors could not? Sarah glanced down at Azura, who was looking up at her with trust and growing affection. I think sometimes the best way to help someone isn't to try to fix their sadness, but just to sit with them and share something sweet. The small dining chamber turned out to be roughly the size of a human banquet hall, with a table that could accommodate a dozen beings of various sizes. Other ambassadors were already present, the crystalline form of a vegan delegate, the floating energy being that represented the astral collective, and several others Sarah recognized from diplomatic briefings. As they entered, conversation stopped, and all attention focused on Princess Azura. Sarah tensed, ready to protect the child from unwanted scrutiny. But to her surprise, the assembled delegates rose in a gesture of respect. Your Highness, said Ambassador Takala of the Vegan Confederacy, her crystalline voice ringing like a bell. We are honored by your presence. Please, join us. Azura squeezed Sarah's hand but walked forward with the poise of one born to leadership. Thank you all for your kindness during my time of sorrow. I apologize for the disturbance I caused. No apology necessary, rumbled the massive form of Ambassador Cruton from the Heavy World Alliance. Grief is universal, young one. We all mourn in our own ways. As they took their seats, Sarah noticed how the other ambassadors made an effort to include Azura in their conversation, asking gentle questions about her preferences for food and her comfort in the palace. It was clear that her 3 days of inconsolable crying had been born from worry and compassion rather than annoyance. The meal itself was a revelation. Zephyrian cuisine involved foods that changed color and temperature as you ate them, flavors that evolved and shifted in your mouth. Azura seemed more relaxed with each course, even laughing when Sarah's eyes went wide at a soup that turned purple when she tasted it. It's responding to your brain chemistry, Azura explained, giggling at Sarah's expression. Zephyrian food is partly alive. It tries to complement your mood. That's either fascinating or terrifying, Sarah replied, watching the soup shift to a warm golden color. I'm not sure which. The conversation naturally turned to cultural exchange, with each ambassador sharing stories of their homeworld's cuisines and customs. Azura listened intently, occasionally asking questions that showed remarkable insight for someone so young. Princess, said Ambassador Takala toward the end of the meal, if I may ask, what are your plans now? The Council has discussed several options for your care and education. Azura's scales dimmed slightly, and Sarah saw the child's hands tremble almost imperceptibly. I'm not sure. I know I can't return home, and I don't want to be hidden away somewhere safe but lonely. Sarah felt an idea forming, one that was probably crazy but felt absolutely right. What if, she said slowly, there was another option? What if Princess Azura could come to Earth as a cultural ambassador? She could learn about our world while teaching us about her people's heritage. The table fell silent as the assembled diplomats considered this unprecedented suggestion. Ambassador Kelrian's eye stalks swiveled nervously as he processed Sarah's suggestion. Earth? But humans are still considered a developing species. No offense intended, Captain Chen, but your world has only been part of the galactic community for 5 decades, which makes it perfect, Sarah replied, warming to her idea. Princess Azura needs a place where she can heal and grow without the weight of 1,000 years of diplomatic protocol. Earth is still figuring out its place in the galaxy. We could learn from each other. Azura looked between the adults with growing hope. Would I be safe on Earth? Would they accept me? Sarah smiled. Humans have always been curious about other cultures, even our own. We've spent our entire history meeting new peoples and learning from them. Some of us, anyway. She paused thoughtfully. Besides, Earth children would be fascinated by a real alien princess. You'd probably be the most popular person in whatever school you attended. School? Azura's scales shifted to an interested blue-green. You have communal learning centers? Oh yes. Children from ages 5 to 18 attend schools where they learn everything from basic mathematics to art and music and science. They make friends, join clubs, play games. Sarah's expression grew wistful. I think you'd love it. And I think Earth children would love learning about the crystalline territories from someone who actually lived there. Ambassador Takala chimed softly. The sound of her crystalline form resonating with what Sarah had learned was approval. This is an interesting proposal. The child would serve as a cultural bridge between Earth and what remains of her people. And Earth's relative isolation would provide security. But who would care for her? Asked the floating energy form of the astral collective representative, its voice like whispered wind. She is still very young by her species standards. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing she was about to change her life irrevocably. I would. If Princess Azura agrees, and if Earth government approves, I would apply to become her guardian. I'm trained in xenocultural studies. I have experience with children. And she looked down at Azura's hopeful face. I think we understand each other. Azura's scales bloomed into brilliant gold and rose patterns. You would want to take care of me? Even though I'm not human? Especially because you're not human, Sarah replied warmly. You have so much to teach us, so many stories to share, and honestly, I think you'd make my life much more interesting. Ambassador Cruton's massive form shifted forward. The girl would need protection. There are still Korthak raiding fleets in the outer sectors. If they learned the princess survived, Earth's location in the Orion Arm provides natural protection, Sarah pointed out. We're far from the main shipping lanes, and our defensive capabilities are improving rapidly. Plus, keeping her location secret would be easier on a world where aliens are still unusual enough to be memorable. The discussion continued for another hour, with various ambassadors raising concerns, and Sarah addressing each one. Throughout it all, Azura listened carefully, occasionally asking questions that showed she understood the gravity of what was being discussed. Finally, Ambassador Kelrian called for a recess to allow the ambassadors to consult with their governments. As the dining chamber emptied, Sarah and Azura found themselves alone with the aftermath of what might have been the most important conversation of both their lives. Do you really want to come to Earth? Sarah asked. I want to be sure this is your choice, not just something you're agreeing to. Because I suggested it. Azura was quiet for a long moment, her scales cycling through thoughtful purples and blues. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about building a new village. The Zephyrians are kind, but they're so different from my people. Their emotions are quiet and controlled. Mine are. She gestured to her scales, which had shifted to a vibrant pattern of golds and reds. Loud. Humans are pretty loud emotionally too, Sarah admitted with a laugh. And your treats made me feel better than anything else has since the invasion. If human food can do that, maybe human people can help me learn to be happy again. Azura looked up at Sarah with those remarkable eyes. Plus, I want to learn about the singing insects. Bees, Sarah corrected with a smile. And yes, I'll introduce you to lots of bees. 3 days later, the response came from Earth. The Global Council, after heated debate, had agreed to accept Princess Azura as the first alien ward of a human citizen. Sarah's application for guardianship had been fast-tracked and approved, though she would be required to undergo additional training in xenobiology and alien psychology. More importantly, the educational authorities had developed a unique program that would allow Azura to attend regular school while also participating in cultural exchange programs. She would live with Sarah in Geneva, near the European diplomatic quarter, where she could easily access both human and alien communities. They want to meet you first, Sarah explained as she helped Azura pack her few belongings. There will be interviews and medical examinations to make sure Earth's environment won't harm you. But assuming everything goes well, we could be on Earth within the month. Azura carefully wrapped a small crystal sculpture, one of the few items she'd managed to save from her homeworld. What if I don't fit in? What if human children think I'm strange? Some probably will, Sarah said honestly. "But many others will think you're the most amazing person they've ever met. And anyone who's mean to you will have to answer to me. Will you teach me to make those chocolate treats you shared?" "Absolutely. And cookies, and cakes, and ice cream, and about 100 other things that I guarantee will make you very popular at school." The journey to Earth took 2 weeks aboard a diplomatic transport. During the trip, Sarah began teaching Azura more about human culture. While Azura shared more stories about her people, they discovered that despite the vast differences in their species, they had remarkably similar ideas about friendship, family, and the importance of preserving beautiful things. Azura was fascinated by human history, especially the parts about how different human cultures had met and influenced each other. "So, humans have always been like the galactic community, just on one world?" "Exactly. We've been practicing cultural exchange for thousands of years. We just didn't know we were preparing for aliens." When their ship entered Earth's solar system, Azura pressed her face to the viewport in wonder. "It's so blue, just like my name." "Wait until you see it up close," Sarah promised. The landing at Geneva Spaceport attracted considerable attention. News crews from across Earth had gathered to witness the arrival of the first alien refugee, while crowds of curious humans lined the observation decks. Sarah had worried that the attention might overwhelm Azura, but the young princess handled it with remarkable grace. "They're all here to see me?" Azura asked as they descended the transport's ramp. "You're making history," Sarah replied. "How does it feel to be the most famous person on Earth?" Azura's scales shifted to a brilliant pattern of gold and silver. What Sarah had learned was the color of joy mixed with nervousness. "It feels like the beginning of something wonderful." The first few months on Earth exceeded even Sarah's optimistic expectations. Azura adapted to human society with remarkable ease, her natural intelligence and charm winning over everyone she met. Her enrollment at the Geneva International School became the educational event of the decade, with xenobiologists and child psychologists monitoring her progress with fascination. But more importantly, Azura thrived. Her scales returned to their natural luster, and her laughter became a regular sound in Sarah's apartment. She made friends with human children who were initially awed by her alien nature but quickly came to simply enjoy her company. She also became an unexpected ambassador for both her lost people and humanity itself. When she spoke about the crystalline territories at cultural events, she painted pictures of beauty and wonder that made humans dream of exploration and contact with other peaceful species. When she described human kindness and curiosity to alien visitors, she spoke of a species worth knowing and protecting. 6 months after her arrival, as Sarah tucked her into bed in the small room they decorated with both human and alien elements, Azura asked, "Do you think my parents would be proud of me?" Sarah smoothed the child's scaled forehead gently. "I think they would be amazed by your strength and wisdom. You've taken the beautiful parts of their culture and shared them with a whole new world. You've turned your grief into something that helps others. That's what the best leaders do." Azura smiled sleepily, her scales settling into the soft blues and purples that meant contentment. "Tomorrow, Jenny wants to learn how to make crystal sculptures, and I promise to teach Marcus the harmony singing techniques of my people." "Spreading the cultural exchange in both directions," Sarah observed with approval. "The way it should be," Azura agreed, then yawned hugely. "Sarah, thank you for sharing your treats with me, and for sharing your world." As Sarah turned off the lights, leaving only the gentle glow of a small crystal lamp that Azura had grown herself using techniques her mother had taught her, she reflected on how much both their lives had changed. What had started with simple chocolate shared in grief had become something neither of them could have imagined. Outside the window, the lights of Geneva sparkled in the darkness, and somewhere in the city, human children were falling asleep dreaming of crystal gardens and singing insects, while their parents planned cultural exchange programs that would connect Earth to the wider galaxy in ways both profound and joyful. The noble hatchling had indeed stopped crying. In its place was laughter, curiosity, and the kind of hope that could build bridges between worlds.